Let's say that you wanted to make a new program in Java, and you were really excited about all of this, and you thought, you know what? Gosh darn it, I want to do this too. So what you do, first of all, is you're going to open up Eclipse. And it's going to ask, I'm going to close it so that you can see this whole process from beginning to end. When you open Eclipse, it's going to ask you what workspace you want to be in. Now when you set up Eclipse for the first time on your computer, it auto-generates in your Documents folder another little folder called Workspace, and I did actually do a tutorial on our class YouTube site about how this all works. So you're going to need to refer to that if you've got any questions about that. Alright, so I'm going to select a workspace that I've actually made called Workspace Student. In your case, it's just going to say Workspace. So I'll click OK, and then I open up Eclipse. Now, if you don't have Eclipse anymore, you can go to our class website, and in the programming page, on the sidebar, Nikolai has helped out with this sidebar. Here's where you can go to, oh, I need to remove that, don't I? Here's where you can go to download. Here's our programming class YouTube channel. Here's Stanford Eclipse download. That's what you would do to download Eclipse again. Here's the instructions on downloading and installing Stanford Eclipse. That's a YouTube video. And if you have any problems with this, Nikolai can definitely help you out with that. So let's go back over to Eclipse. Alright, so Eclipse is opened up. Now the first thing you're going to want to do is make a new project. So you go up here to File, New, and then you're going to choose Java Project. And I'm going to call this my apps class. And I just click Finish, and that's really all there is to it. Okay, now I have a folder to put all my projects in. You'll notice that it auto-generates this little source folder right here, and that's perfectly fine. Make sure that the top level folder is selected to make a new file inside that called a class. There's a couple of opportunities you have for doing this. You can either go over to New Java Class right here, or you could go File, New, Class. And you're going to have to name it something. No spaces, camel casing is good. Name it something that has something to do, and you can't name it a reserved word either, although it's going to let me do it here, but I'm just going to name this integer demo like that. Now you're also going to want to check this little box right here. This is the main method header. Check that. Just trust me on this one for now. You don't really need to know what it actually does. We'll talk about that at some other time. And then we click OK. So now I have this little auto-generated class right here, public class, integer demo, and we have this auto-generated method stub right here. Let me just tell you a little bit about what's happening here. So this right here is a method block, and then this, from the public class integer demo all the way to this ending parentheses down here, this is the entire class. Alright? All your code would go in here. So if you wanted to set up an int, let's talk about integers first. Integers are really counting numbers. If you wanted to know how many chocolate chip cookies I had, you'd use an integer to determine that number. Integers can be quite large and quite small, obviously. But the thing of it is that, let's see if we've got a little chart here that tells us something about integers. I just had it opened up. Well, let's set up a int cookies equals 60. That's a pretty good number of cookies right there. Now you're going to notice something. I think everything might be okay now. Okay, so the thing is that you'll get all these opportunities to do something about that, and the thing that people always start doing when they start coding is they start randomly picking these things. You know, you hover over the little warning, and then you start randomly picking some different stuff. Okay, yeah, we'll close Outlook too. Alright, so is this going to get better ever? Yep, okay. Yeah, so you can hover over this light bulb and you'll get these opportunities to change things. Well, don't, okay, because sometimes that's useful and sometimes it's not. What we really want to do is this, system.out, and you're going to be able to do this if you want. Oh, it didn't let us do that. Well, that's okay. Print lin, and then in parentheses, I'm going to put in a string. Cookies are sufficient for us. This doesn't really make a whole lot of logical sense, but okay, so how many cookies are there? That's a little bit better. Alright, so then let's go outside there. Now we're going to do something called concatenation. That plus sign right there. Concatenation is basically a fancy word for adding two different types of data together and spitting them out into one great cookie. Plus. Now I don't want to type in the number 60 like this, because I've already used that up here. I mean, I could do that if I wanted to. It's going to be a little weird. Cookies. And this might not be a capital. Let's just see what happens. Oh, okay, life is good now. Alright, so I've set up an integer data type. I've named it cookies. I've assigned it a static value of 60. And I'm going to print out a little message here in my console. And I'm going to pass in the value of the cookies. So let's just try this out and see what happens. Here we go. It's pretty exciting. Integers are cool. I gotta find that chart that I just had open that talked about integers in a little bit more detail. Well, let's run this first and then we'll do that. Integer demo. Alright. Integers can obviously be much bigger or much smaller than 60. How many cookies are there? Well, turns out there's 60. Alright, so let's see here. Teacher sites. I think it was in here somewhere. Data types, maybe. Is this the one? Oh, those are operators, integer variables, maybe. Yep. Let's take a look at this and see what we got. If it'll open up. There are 8 primitive data types in Java. What that means, essentially, is that these are the 8 data types that come prepackaged with Java. And I don't see it anywhere here. Sort of annoying, isn't it? Oh, it's going to open up in pages. That's even more annoying. So there's 8 primitive data types in Java, but the way that I generally teach people Java is like I teach chess, and that is that you really only need to learn how to move one piece at a time. So we're only going to move one piece at a time here, and we're going to move the integer data type. Okay, so variables have a name, a type, and a value. Let's look at some. How about integers, or int? Okay, so the type is int. Here's the name. Let's set up it looks like we're setting up an integer data type to be my age, and my age is 46, which it actually is not. So name, int, my age equals 46. So this is how I would set it up in a statement that I would put into Eclipse. You'd have to declare the data type, the name of the data type, and then you'd have to initialize it to some value. So you can declare variables one at a time like this, right? So if I went back over here and I wanted to declare another int milk equals 20, although I don't know what that would theoretically stand for. That's all very well and good, but there's a shorthand way to do this that makes a lot more sense. Instead of closing this up with a semicolon, I can put a comma, and I could do milk equals 20, just like that. And that way I can string long lines of integer data types together without having to spell the word int over and over and over again. So you separate each time with a comma, and then when you finally close the statement, you would use your semicolon, just like that. So now I have two integer data types, but they're all on one great row. Okay. Well, here's some different types of data. We won't get into that right now, but here's our int. And here's the minimum value that an int can have. And here's a maximum value that an int can have. An integer occupies 4, or can occupy, up to 4 bytes worth of data. Well, what does that actually mean? Well, we'll talk about that. Believe me, we will. But for now, just know that you can put a big honking number in an integer data type. There's one thing you can't do with an int, though, that you can do with another data type, the double. That is, you can't use decimals with an integer. And I think we're going to leave it at that. Maybe we'll go back over to our little application here and take a look at what I did with this milk integer data type. So I added the milk integer data type to my string of, well, I shouldn't use the word string, but my list of variables. Now, if I had not added that to this, of course, I'm going to go back to my little warning code here, because I haven't actually read the variable. So I'm going to have to concatenate, and then I'm going to add my milk to that. All right. Now, there's one other thing you should probably know about. These are comments right in here. So if you wanted to put some special instructions in your program that were only for people to read and not the computer to read, there's a couple different ways to do this. You could either do a double slash. This is a comment, like so. And the computer won't read that, but it helps a human being to be able to read it. Or you could do this, and that puts in whole lines of comments so that you can actually keep typing. This program calculates the amount of cookies and milk we will need for the party. Isn't it funny that I want cookies and milk at my party? I must be a little kid. All right. So obviously we have not actually calculated that, but one thing you want to do with the program is tell the person who's looking at it what it's actually going to do, so that they know that what your intention was, because if you go further down in the program and it doesn't actually do that, then the person knows that there's problems in River City. So I hope you've enjoyed this little do, and I will see you on Friday, hopefully.